What would you do if you woke up one morning to find your entire family gone, taken from you in the most brutal way imaginable? For a 10-year-old boy in Oklahoma, this nightmare became his reality. His world was shattered in an instant, and the horror of that moment would haunt him forever. But how does something like this happen? How does a family that seemed perfect, a man who appeared to be an ordinary father, turn into someone capable of such unimaginable violence? It's a question that many would ask when they learned the tragic fate of the Lee family, a question that unravels a story of pain, isolation, and desperation. Housevil True Crime involving family. Every family has secrets, any family can cross the line. Hi, I'm Matt. Welcome to Housevil, where we explore the darkest stories of family secrets turned tragic. Today's case is a haunting reminder that no one is immune to the fragility of mental health. The tragic murder-suicide of the Lee family left a boy without his parents, siblings, and the life he once knew. But to understand how we got here, we must look deep into the family's dynamic and the hidden struggles that ultimately led to this devastating loss. This is the story of the Lee family: Cody Lee, his wife Erica, and their children. In the early morning hours of December 2023, their lives were forever altered by an event that would leave a deep scar on their small Oklahoma community. But what happened that fateful night wasn't a random outburst of violence. It was the culmination of years of hidden tension, something that had been quietly simmering under the surface. And it was the 10-year-old son who would wake up to find that everything he knew had been ripped away. His world, which should have been full of innocence and wonder, was suddenly filled with unspeakable tragedy and trauma that no child should ever have to face. As we explore the dynamics of the Lee family, we'll uncover the darker layers of what was really going on behind the closed doors of their home. We'll see how unspoken pain and silent struggles ultimately converged in a tragic moment, and how one child was left to face a new reality, a reality that would forever change the course of his life. The Lee family, from the outside, appeared to live an idyllic and typical life in rural Oklahoma. Cody Lee worked as a truck driver, often away from home for days or even weeks at a time, hauling freight across the country. His wife Erica was a stay-at-home mom, deeply involved in raising their two children, providing a stable and nurturing environment for them. To their neighbors, friends, and even extended family, the Lees seemed like the kind of family everyone could rely on: quiet, hardworking, and respectful. Nothing about their day-to-day lives suggested any cause for concern, no outward signs of strife or struggle. However, like many families, there were pressures that remained hidden beneath the surface, pressures that only those closest to them could have guessed at. Cody, in particular, found himself wrestling with deep mental health challenges, ones that he kept locked away behind a wall of silence. He had suffered from bouts of depression in the past, but these episodes were always fleeting, or so it seemed. Over time, however, these dark moments grew more intense and harder to ignore. Cody's usual stoic demeanor began to show cracks, though no one around him could pinpoint the cause. He often confided in close family members, admitting the strain he felt from the constant pressure to provide for his family. He spoke of the stress of his job, long hours spent on the road, often away from home, and the overwhelming isolation that came with being away for so long. The job that had once been a source of pride now felt like a weight on his shoulders. At home, Erica did her best to manage their household, but like many couples, they faced challenges that often went unspoken. Their financial situation, which was growing more precarious, added another layer of stress. The mounting debts, the struggle to make ends meet, it all took a toll on Cody's mental health. Yet, in a small community where mental health issues are often swept under the rug, Cody felt that seeking help was not an option. The stigma surrounding mental health, especially in rural areas, made him feel as though admitting his struggles would be seen as a weakness. Instead, he kept his feelings to himself, isolating from others, burying his pain deeper with each passing day. His withdrawal was subtle, almost imperceptible to those who didn't know him well. Cody became more distant, less engaged with his family and friends. The once outgoing man who had been the steady backbone of his family now retreated into himself, his emotional burdens piling higher, unchecked and unaddressed. While Cody's struggles remained unseen by many, they were slowly consuming him. His isolation grew more pronounced, and his attempts to cope with the mounting pressure seemed to unravel. The emotional toll, combined with financial strain, job-related stress, and a sense of helplessness, created a perfect storm of despair. For those closest to him, it was a gradual shift, a slow burning change that no one could have predicted would ultimately lead to something far darker. By the time the tragedy struck, Cody's mental health had reached a breaking point. His struggles, which had been simmering beneath the surface for so long, were now impossible to ignore, even though those closest to him still didn't fully grasp the extent of his despair. Financial pressures had only worsened, creating a constant, ever-present weight on his shoulders. What was once a job he took great pride in, the long hours spent driving his truck, the independence it offered, had slowly transformed into something that drained him. The grueling demands of the road, the constant isolation from his family, and the relentless stress of trying to make ends meet in an increasingly difficult financial climate began to take their toll on him in ways he couldn't escape. At home, things were no better. The connection he once shared with Erica had started to erode. Their marriage, which had once been a partnership built on love and mutual support, was now plagued by tension. Behind closed doors, the arguments grew more frequent, often revolving around money, the debts that seemed insurmountable, the bills that piled up faster than they could pay them, and the growing emotional distance between them. The intimacy they once had, the shared moments of joy and laughter, had been replaced by cold silence and resentment. Erica, exhausted from handling the household responsibilities alone, struggled to understand the depth of Cody's internal battle. Cody, on the other hand, felt as though he was sinking under the weight of his responsibilities, unable to reach out to his wife, friends, or anyone who might help him. Though outwardly Cody continued to maintain his daily routines, inwardly he was becoming more and more isolated. His sense of connection to his family, his job, and even himself seemed to fade. He withdrew not just physically, but emotionally, closing himself off from the people who loved him most. This isolation left him to battle his growing sense of hopelessness alone. The anxiety, the weight of the mounting debts, and the lack of support created a toxic combination that he didn't know how to navigate. For months, Cody had been struggling in silence, never fully acknowledging just how deeply his mental health had been affected. There were moments when he thought about reaching out, seeking help, but the shame and stigma surrounding mental health, particularly in their small, tight-knit community, prevented him from doing so. He felt trapped, unable to escape the pressure of trying to be everything for everyone, while feeling like he was losing himself in the process. The overwhelming sense of hopelessness was compounded by a growing fear that his problems were insurmountable. Each passing day added another layer of emotional strain, and the possibility of relief seemed farther away than ever. As time went on, the emotional pressure began to mount to dangerous levels. His once concealed struggles, mental health issues, financial hardship, and fractured relationships were now converging in a way that no one could predict. Cody had been slowly spiraling downward, but the gravity of his situation was invisible to those around him. The years of emotional turmoil and unresolved mental health issues had been building, and the intense internal pressure he felt from all sides was nearing a breaking point. The culmination of years of emotional struggle, financial strain, and the unrelenting burden of his unaddressed mental health issues was approaching a breaking point. One that once reached would forever alter the lives of his family. What no one had realized, not even those closest to Cody, was how carefully he had hidden his downward spiral. His struggles had been building over time, a slow, invisible descent into darkness that, in the final days before the tragedy, became impossible to ignore. Cody's depression and anxiety had grown more intense, and the isolation that had once been his way of coping now became a crushing weight. Every day, the emotional burden seemed heavier, and the once seemingly ordinary man became a stranger even to those who knew him best. In the weeks leading up to the tragedy, Cody's mental health had deteriorated to a point where the internal pain he had long suppressed could no longer be contained. Investigators later uncovered that, in his darkest moments, Cody had researched ways to end his life. This revelation stunned those who had never suspected the depth of his suffering. It was clear that, while he had kept his struggles hidden for so long, he had been planning and grappling with his despair alone for a long time. The discovery of a note left at the scene offered no clear answers, only a final, heartbreaking expression of his anguish. The note didn't attempt to justify his actions or offer a reason for the devastation he caused. It simply revealed the depth of the emotional turmoil that had consumed him, pain that had festered in silence and had no outlet. What made the tragedy even more difficult to understand was the fact that Cody's actions were not a result of one momentary breakdown or an isolated incident. They were the devastating culmination of months, if not years, of internal suffering. His mental health issues had been untreated and unchecked, silently festering beneath the surface of his daily life. The financial pressures, the isolation from his family, the overwhelming sense of hopelessness, all of these factors had contributed to the perfect storm of despair that eventually exploded in an act of violence. What those around him could not have known was that Cody's behavior in the days leading up to the tragedy was a reflection of the depths of his pain, not a sudden, inexplicable change. His violent actions were not impulsive or erratic, they were a tragic outpouring of years of unresolved emotional struggles. To everyone who knew him, Cody had been the quiet, hardworking man who would do anything for his family. But in reality, behind that facade, he had been quietly unraveling, unable to ask for help or find the support he so desperately needed. The tragedy that unfolded was not just a result of Cody's financial burdens or the stress of his job, it was a more profound and insidious issue that had remained hidden beneath the surface, untreated mental health struggles that no one saw coming. His sudden and violent actions were a reflection of the years of emotional turmoil, mental health deterioration, and isolation he had endured without ever fully acknowledging the depth of his pain. The devastation that resulted from this explosion of years of internal suffering shocked everyone, leaving a community to grapple with the tragic truth that sometimes the most visible signs of distress are the ones most easily ignored. In the days following the tragedy, the small Oklahoma community was left in shock. The news of the Lee family's fate spread quickly, leaving friends, neighbors, and extended family grappling with disbelief and sorrow. For the surviving boy, a 10-year-old child, the world he had known was gone in an instant. The joy of family gatherings, the comfort of his parents' presence, and the simple, everyday moments that children take for granted were all erased. The boy woke up that fateful morning to find his home in chaos, his family taken from him in the most unimaginable way. In the weeks and months that followed, he would try to make sense of what had happened, struggling to comprehend the loss and the pain. His innocence was shattered, and a deep, unspoken grief settled over him, a grief that words couldn't capture. His emotional journey would be long and fraught with difficulty, but with the help of family, friends, and counselors, he would begin the painstaking process of healing. But even as this child began his journey toward recovery, the ripple effects of the tragedy stretched far beyond his immediate family. The community, too, was forced to come to terms with the harsh reality that a tragedy of this magnitude could unfold right in their own backyard. Friends who had known Cody for years felt a deep sense of guilt, wondering how they had missed the signs of his suffering. How could someone so close, someone they thought they knew so well, have been silently battling demons they couldn't see? It was in these moments of reflection that the community began to come together, albeit with a profound sense of sorrow. Local leaders and mental health professionals spoke out about the urgent need for better mental health resources in rural areas, where stigma surrounding mental illness often prevents people from reaching out for help. The tragedy served as a stark reminder that, despite the advances we've made in understanding mental health, many people still suffer in silence, unable or unwilling to ask for the support they need. For the surviving boy, the road to healing would be long and uncertain. No one could erase the trauma he had faced, but with time, love, and care, he would slowly begin to rebuild his life. His resilience would eventually shine through, though it would take years for the weight of his loss to truly lift. But the emotional scars would stay with him, a shadow he would carry for the rest of his life. As he grew older, he would never forget that morning nor the family he lost. His story, like the story of the Lee family, would become part of a larger conversation, a conversation about mental health, about the silent struggles many face, and about the importance of checking in on those around us, even when everything seems fine on the surface. This tragedy was a turning point for the community. It was a painful but necessary awakening about the fragility of mental health and the urgent need for compassion. The ripple effects of Cody's struggle, of the pain he hid for so long, became a catalyst for change, changing the way the community viewed mental health and igniting conversations about how to better support those who might be suffering in silence. The legacy of the Lee family's story would not just be one of heartbreak and loss, but a call to action, a call to look beyond the surface, to reach out to others, and to never assume that someone is fine just because they're not speaking about their pain. And so while the boy's healing had only just begun, his journey, like the community's, would eventually lead to a place where mental health was no longer ignored, and where understanding and compassion could pave the way for a brighter, more supportive future. As we reflect on the story of the Lee family, we are reminded of how fragile life can be. No one can predict when a hidden struggle will spiral into something catastrophic, And while we may never fully understand why Cody chose to take such a drastic step, we do know that mental health awareness, understanding, and support are more important now than ever. As we come to the end of this story, we are reminded of the fragility of human life, the hidden burdens that people sometimes carry, and the devastating consequences of failing to address those burdens. Cody Lee's story is one of deep loss, but it is also a call for greater empathy, understanding, and mental health support. In the face of such a tragedy, we can only hope that this serves as a reminder to look beyond the surface, to reach out to those who may be silently suffering, and to never let anyone feel that they are beyond help. If you found this story important, take a moment to check in on those around you. Mental health struggles often go unnoticed, but with compassion and support, we can help prevent tragedies like this one. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to Housevil for more stories that reveal the dark truths behind family bonds. Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.